started long ago with a man named Willem with his school, Byrgenwerth. Willem was the head of this school and his main goal was to achieve a higher planes of thoughts by advancing their human evolution. And yet he never stops learning and always seeks new information with his school scholars. They even explores the world in search for any valuable information that can help them achieving their goal. However, one day during their search they came across to an underground cave system. Little did they know how this cave will affect their lives. Moreover, after exploring it, they got to know about its name and history. The cave was known as the Labyrinth and was the ruins of an ancient old civilization, Sumerian. They further explored it and found a mysterious blood written as the miraculous healing blood, a blood able to cure any disease. And yet this blood was actually the old blood. This is how the lore begins. Old blood, one of the most important key aspects in the Bloodborne's lore, and those who don't know for now just remember, it's the blood of the gods or superiors, known as the Great Ones, and the blood is what makes the entire world go round. But perhaps more importantly, the school discovered the Eldritch Truth and brought it back to the surface, later imprisoned it in the hidden altar of despair. Although Willem pursued Eldritch Truth to avoid using the old blood fearing its corrupting influence, but his scholar seeks it as an advantage for achieving their evolving goal. This opposition act is known for the creation of the Healing Church. However, the Healing Church was founded by Lawrence, one of the Willem's favorite students and a leading scholar at Byrgenwerth. Even though their relation was close, but their philosophies for the Bloodborne's lore never met. Despite that, the Healing Church wasn't a discovery, but a group formed after a major disagreement between Willem and Lawrence. Let's now quickly discuss some of the theories about its foundation. According to a theory, the Healing Church was officially founded after Lawrence's death by his followers due to his transformation into a beast after succumbing the old blood, and that in his case was just an honorary title. Even so, the director of the game, Miyazaki, said in the Drained of Blood interview, Lawrence's skull served as the start of the Healing Church. Another theory tells us that Lawrence himself founded the church when he was alive. In reality, his human skull only exists within the nightmare, and yet Lawrence didn't just transform into a random beast but into a much powerful cleric beast, which indicates that he wasn't a scholar but a cleric when he died, and yet it was clerics soon transformed into the most deformed beast. Sword Hunter Badge and Lady Maria are two most important pieces of evidence here. The final consideration tells that the Healing Church was started as a group of mere doctors who performed blood healing or blood administration for curing illness and diseases. By performing these operations, they built great wealth and power in the city, and using their power, they soon developed into a fully established church. Blood administration. In the game, blood administration is the act of blood transfusions, a process of mixing human blood with the dangerous old blood, and yet in small doses, the blood cures illness. However, in larger doses, the blood causes the scourge of the beast, transforming humans into monstrous beasts. But the Healing Church, being the starting point of blood administration, controls all the knowledge about it and the other varieties of bloods. For church, blood administration is of course a seek for connection with great ones. The Byrgenwerth. As we already know, Byrgenwerth is Willem's school, but its members went to establish the Healing Church with Lawrence, leaving Master Willem quiet in his rocking chair at Byrgenwerth. Soon after the Healing Church spreads their blood ministration, the beast scourge begins. At first, it was manageable, giving time to prepare, as Gehrman, the first hunter, after realizing the threats, quickly creates the burial blade and alters his clothes to be able to take them down. In this sense, everything hallowed in Yharnam can be traced back to Byrgenwerth, even though it was built in a peaceful private area close to a peaceful lake. And yet this is the place where the great ones were studied, but mainly studied on how to make contact with them. Even the first hunter, Gehrman, was a friend of Lawrence, and is likely that he begins here too. Willem and Lawrence. Master Willem as the head of the academy is a highly respected figure. All characters who refer to Willem specifically refer to Master Willem, indicating a deep respect even if they had differences in beliefs. However, his primary focus of study concerned the limits of human intelligence. Even so, his philosophy was based in caution and knowledge. His famous saying was,
"Fear the old blood."
He believed that humanity's path to a higher plane was through insight or cosmic knowledge, which he tried to find by lining his brain with eyes. He saw the old blood as a dangerous and unpredictable medium that could corrupt humans and lead to destruction. However, Lawrence was more like a risk-taker, primarily focused on the benefits without caring about the dangers that can occur. He sees the old blood as a beneficial discovery that shouldn't be wasted, yet saw it as the key to a faster, more direct form of human evolution. evolution. Willem and Lawrence eventually had a falling out. Their opposite thinking and views for the outcome makes us aware about the future conflicts that can occur. Moreover, when Lawrence leaves with his followers to found the Healing Church, Willem considered this as a betrayal. Later, Lawrence and his church brought the blood to the city. In the end, Willem was proven right when the blood was found to be infected, and Lawrence himself falls victim in this conflict. Except from Willem likely learned the Gehrman Buckshop's reputation for hunting down the beasts and reached out for his help to deal with the monsters growing within his school. So this agreement led to their growing friendship, with Gehrman respecting Willem as a teacher the same as his students. But somehow he is one of the two people Gehrman cries out for in his sleep. Now the first note makes it clear that Lawrence did respect the master even after he felt his saying to hurt, but sadly couldn't understand it. Although Byrgenwerth and Willem complained about what the church became, but the church didn't seem to care and kept performing their actions. And here comes a theory about Lawrence, that he likely was in charge of both the choir and the School of Menses. Both of these groups were once students at Byrgenwerth until they discovered the Great One, Ebritas. At some point, Lawrence and his associates performed a ritual, and whether intended or not, they summoned the Moon Presence, who caused the Ashen Blood. However, for its cure, blood ministration was performed, which later began the Plague of Beasts. The Great One's agenda. Great Ones are powerful beings researched by both Willem and Lawrence, but very little is known about their nature, their motives, and how many there are. However, their status as a Great One is often revealed through hints in the lore or most directly by the trophy descriptions. Some of the most powerful and significant of these beings are fought as the elite bosses in the game. Theories. This might upset the hard-working hunters, but whenever they slay a Great One, they actually haven't killed the mighty, supreme being. Instead, they are only destroying their physical forms, and its mind simply returns to the cosmic realm where it can eventually manifest in a new form. Despite being beings of a higher status, the Great Ones are said to be sympathetic in nature. Throughout the game, there is a lot of evidence of this. When Gehrman was heartbroken after losing his favorite student, Lady Maria, he fashioned a doll in her image and prayed to a Great One to bring it to life. And the fact that the Moon Presence answered his prayers by trapping him in the hunter's dream, forcing him to serve as its host. It didn't bring Lady Maria back to life, but instead he filled the doll with a spirit of its own, turning her into a tool. A standing part refers the Moon Presence's desire for a child. To help him, Lawrence and Gehrman made a trade by promising it a child in exchange for the hunter's dream, along with some immortal hunters to fight the beast. So the Gehrman becomes a temporary replacement as a promised child until Lawrence could find a permanent one. But Lawrence failed in his search. Later, the School of Menses used the body of Margot, a dead baby, to call the Moon Presence. But this caused the night of the hunt to become endless. When the last time this happened, it resulted in Gehrman being trapped and old Yarna being burned to the ground. Ultimately, Great Ones want to have children, just like any species. But the problem is that every Great One is biologically unique. Because of this, they can't successfully have babies with each other. So they try to have children with humans instead. But that also doesn't work well due to their very different biology. Look at Kos's slain body. I'm assuming Kos used to be a human because of his human-like face and fingers. None of the other Great Ones look this human. This creates a sense of thinking that she might be once human or a mix of human and Great One. And yet she is the only Great One we see that had a child, the orphan of Kos, who looks even more human than her. This suggests a theory that orphan might possess human blood. It's a wild guess, but some people think Gehrman might have been involved in creating the orphan because the orphan's voice sounds like his. Since in the early days of the Healing Church, the Great Ones were linked to the ocean. This line always felt weird, as the main Great One Moon Presence comes from the sky, and others like the Brain of Menses appears to belong to the abyssal plane beneath the loft, so the others belonging to different locations. As mentioned earlier, the church doesn't actually worship the Great Ones, but rather sees them as tools or obstacles to help humans evolve. And I didn't remember a single line of text mentioning the specific worship of Great Ones by the church. They only shows a strong desire for their blood, which is used as a tool. Furthermore, the only time we see a clear act of worship is during the Baker Emilia cutscene, where she is praying to an altar. Not an altar depicting a Great One, but an altar holding the skull of Lawrence, suggesting that he is the one being worshipped. The Pumerians, a race of human-like beings belonging, form the ancient civilization Pumeru. Additionally, most of the Pumerians possess tall and thin figures, though retaining great strength. But their strange undead appearance comes from being marked by the Eldritch Truth when they came in contact with the Great Ones. The Pumerians remembered as the superhuman beings who said to have unlocked the wisdom of the Eldritch Truth, although they were the ones who built the old labyrinth, a place where it's all started. And yet early Pumerians served as guardians of the Great Ones, with their leader always being a classical named queen. One of them was Yarnam. However, the queen and her city were both known as Tumeru Ihil. For those unaware, the Chime Maidens are Pumerians. In the main story of the game, the Chime Maidens first appear after the death of Spider Rom in the Unseen Village, even though we can assume they might have already been there since they can be found in the Nightmare Frontier before defeating the Rom. However, the Pumerians' presence in the Unseen Village likely means that School of Mensis' plan for summoning the Great One failed completely, as the Pumerians took over and now trying to kill the hunter. They also summoned the huge monster, One Reborn, even though they also had an understanding of elemental fire magic that has been lost over time. Part of the reason that they still exist in the Chalice dungeons is that they used fire rituals to make themselves immortal. These rituals were so powerful as they burned both body and soul, later leaving the Pumerians to haunt the dungeons forever. As time went on, the Pumerians became very proud and eventually called themselves leaders. However, the Great Pumeru Ihil Chalice doesn't really explain what that meant. On a different note, the bell-ringing woman is said to be a mad Pumerian. The bells we use to call or attack other players likely came from the Pumerian origin, or at least they used them a long ago. In conclusion, the Pumerians had a much better understanding of the strange cosmic secrets than anyone in Yharnam. They even dug a huge underground maze to serve as tombs, where they founded the sleeping bodies of the Great Ones. They began to worship and serve them, but even with all their knowledge, the Pumerians couldn't protect themselves from these cosmic forces. Queen Yharnam. Queen Yharnam was known as the last queen of Pumerians. While her appearance includes her white blood-stained dress with a veil to cover face, although she removed it when the player finds her, since the Brzezmert College founded the Pumerian Labyrinth, where they also discovered the body of Yharnam. They took her blood and her dead baby's umbilical cord. However, this stolen blood was later stolen and given to Queen Annalise and her distant relative Ariana. In the end, the cursed bloodline of Cainhurst was created. This would eventually lead to two more umbilical cords, one from Annalise's child and one from her relative Ariana. Finally, all these cords find their way into the hands of the Healing Church. Each of the three cords was used for a different important purpose. One was used for research by the choir and was later used by a fake Iosefka in a failed attempt of becoming a Great One. Another cord was used by Gehrman to talk to the Great Ones. The final cord was used by the School of Mensis in a ritual that went terribly wrong, leading to some devastating outcomes. Pale blood. Pale blood is one of the central mysteries of Bloodborne, and its meaning is deliberately unclear, having multiple ways to understand it, and each way is supported by clues in the game. I think there are two different ways to understand the word pale blood. One way is to think for the color of the sky. After defeating Rome, at that point, the sky turns pale blue. However, a message to seek pale blood is found earlier in the Unseen Village. That's probably a bit tough to pick up on, but the other possible way to think about it, according to Miyazaki, is that pale blood is in fact the name of one of Bloodborne's unknown Great One. Insight is known as stats in Bloodborne. It shows the amount of inhuman knowledge the hunter have achieved by exploring the game and defeating enemies. As it's required for the use of Beckoning Belt, it's also a quite interesting part of the lore, as it determines some important number of factors in the game. Certain characters, locations, items, and enemies in the game are affected by the player's current insight level. It can be also used to purchase rare items from Insight Bath Messengers, even though higher insight levels gradually increases the difficulty of the game. Also, the player's weakness to frenzy grows significantly. Hunter's Dream. Hunter's Dream is a location in Bloodborne, also known as Dream Refuge. It is the place where the player goes after their first death and operates as a central hub providing trade and upgrade services. The player can even port from this location to any of the lamps that they have activated. People here have already said that dreams and nightmares are all planes of reality, although the waking world is the real world. But these dreams and nightmares aren't original, they are a creation of the Great Ones. But for Gehrman, he isn't as powerful as you think, and the dream doesn't doesn't belong to him. He didn't make it, he is trapped in it. The dream was basically made by the moon presence. Even the hunter's dream is an imitation of the original hunter's workshop, now called as the abandoned old workshop under the church's workshop, created by Gehrman and the moon presence. Yet the hunter's dream was originally created to make sure there were always hunters fighting the beasts. Gehrman eventually realized that the dream was attached to his thoughts, with each requiring the existence of the other, and nearly went mad after realizing he could never die and would be a servant forever. The dreams are places in the game, which include the hunter's dream, the nightmare frontier, the lecture building, and the nightmare of Mensis, including some others. These dreams were created by a great one in the image of the host. That's why every nightmare is supposed to resemble the personality or desires of its host. In the case of the hunter's dream, the host is Gehrman, and the great one is the moon presence. Some places have a great one, but no host. This suggests that the host might be dead a long time ago, but the great one is still alive. But the problem occurs when a host dies, as they wake up in the real world with no memory, just like when the hunter killed the Mikulash.
Now I'm waking up. I'll forget everything.
However, the great ones are always looked for a substitute to make him a host, as said in the umbilical cord description. This might be the reason why Moon Presence tries to make the hunter the next host. The dream is like another world where the great ones came from, but when you leave, you wake up in Yharnam in the middle of the hunt. Dying isn't the end though. If you die, you just return to the hunter's dream. This happens because the blood ministration you receive binds you to it. Even the sunrise ending means that Gehrman can break the power of the blood by killing you in dream, sending you back to reality, waking you from that dream with no way back.